Ladies and gentlemen, next talk, please.
Hi, I'm Nia. I'm giving this talk from an experimental display server running Wayland on NetBSD. So at least having video output makes it a success to me. So first of all, I have to start out being a bit sad because we have a load of cool, original, fairly unique APIs in NetBSD that have been developed over the years, but not a whole lot of software uses them. And yeah, it's kind of understandable because working with people is absolutely the worst part of open source. I've been given a lot of reasons for why pull requests haven't been accepted and things like that. And there's an increasing attitude that that even supporting things like BSD is just a too much of a burden, and it's holding open source development back. I really don't agree with that, for obvious reasons. It's just something that's been coming from a particular camp of people, though. And yeah, and we don't want to write everything ourselves. We don't want to completely reinvent WebKit and Nginx and everything else. Maybe we can make some progress, though, if we talk to the right people and work on the right things, and yeah, hopefully this talk helps. So NetBSD has its own audio API that was originally developed at Sun Microsystems, like a lot of technology that people are excited about these days. They seem to just... A lot of things that the tech community is excited about now seems to be things that were invented at Sun in the late 90s and early 2000s. But it's got quite a lot of support in older software, but it's not. So its adoption in newer software since Sun died has not been too great. It's a really intuitive, simple API. I had no idea how to read audio code. I read a man page, and now I know how to write audio code. Just man for audio, if you want to have a look at that. And yeah, you need to use either standard file operations, because like a lot of the APIs I'll be talking about today, everything is a file. And really you just use one ioctl to set the parameters of the audio format in a struct and pass it to the kernel, and then the kernel interprets the audio data or gives you back the audio data in the correct format. Yeah. So, yeah, I wrote a mixer after learning to write audio code. I can probably show it to you if I turn off caps lock. So yeah, this is AOI mixer. You can install that from package source today. It's freely available as a binary package as well now, I think. And it has quite a lot of functionality, actually. If you look at the output classes and everything, and there's various different controls, because you don't just have standard volume control anymore. You need to your laptop has a headphone port, it has speakers. If you have a desktop, it has lots of different ports, and you need to be able to control them independently if you want to be doing like anything but basic tasks. So that allows you to do that, and there was nothing really that existed that met those needs that I had at the time. And this work then led me to Firefox, because audio in Firefox was a complete mess. Let's put it that way. It was a complete mess on all of the BSDs, really, until Sound.io came along. There's an unofficial OSS backend that was using NetBSD's emulation of OSS, which is the old sound system that Linux used to use, like in the early 2000s, before ALSA was invented. Then Pulse Audio was invented, and I'm sure someone at Red Hat is working on reinventing Pulse Audio currently. And yeah, it's been deleted from FreeBSD already because it was full of bugs. We've deleted it now too. Nobody likes writing or using emulation layers or shims. I really do not want to spend my life making sure we are bug for bug compatible with Linux. I cannot stress that enough. Yeah, and Pulse Audio was the option promoted by Mozilla to meet everyone's needs. It's kind of controversial. A lot of our users don't really like it for various reasons. It works, but you don't really need it. We do audio mixing in the kernel. Yeah. And newer tech just necessitated that we do this because I wanted to be able to attend work meetings on my NetBSD machine. And to do that, I needed WebRTC. And we had no way to record from microphones using the OSS backend. So now we have full device selection and a working a working Son Audio driver for Firefox. Yeah, and it's a lot more advanced than the OSS backend and supports various of these features, like allowing for higher quality audio, allowing for surround sound, allowing you to use USB microphones and things like that because, well, I had a USB microphone, I wanted to use it. And yeah, the Mozilla's media team was really nice and helpful. They were less nice and well, the team at Mozilla that was less nice and helpful was their legal team, who threatened to sue me for wanting to call our builds Firefox. And yeah, all of this was done in C because the Mozilla audio library is maintained separately from Firefox. It's maintained on GitHub. The maintainers were really nice to me, and yeah, I don't know Rust. I don't see the point of writing this in Rust because it's just talking to a C kernel API, really. And that brought me... Another thing I have been kind of obsessing over recently is randomness and security and random number generation. And all of the BSDs had this API for many, many years called kern ARAND that you access through sysctl. It has all the advantages that the newer APIs have. You don't need to open a file descriptor like dev random, so it can be done at low level. It's just an endless stream of highly secure random data that never blocks. And there's only a couple of disadvantages. Just because of historical reasons, we just can't read more than 256 bytes per system call. I think that's fine. That's enough to seed a random number generator. And it's not fashionable anymore because the Linux people decided to invent much fancier random number syscalls after there was some drama. But I was just amazed that this API has been around for so long, but so little software used it. Like, all of the BSDs had this. They've had it since the early 2000s, but only really OpenSSL was using this. Nothing else was, really. And GNU-TLS and libuv use it now, and they accepted my patches, and they were very nice, and it was very easy to get that done, so thank you very much. It's just results in much simpler, less error-prone code, I think. I think this syscall has kind of gone out of fashion because people think it's a bit complicated, but this is the entire code in libuv for getting random number generation on NetBSD. I think it's simple enough. I don't think it's too complicated at all. It fits in a slide. And then on IRC, there was some drama because Red Hat had just announced that they're deprecating Xorg in Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and that kind of had a lot of people in our IRC channel panicking. We kind of depend on X11. There's not really any alternative on NetBSD, or at least there wasn't. That brought me to how can I fix this? Because most Wayland code is written exclusively for Linux. It's non-modular, it's non-portable, it's just a big blob of Linux kernel API usage. And FreeBSD's solution to this has basically been, we're going to implement the Linux kernel APIs, we're going to have a shim around ePOL, we're going to link this against everything that uses vaguely Linuxy code. I think I've already stated as much that I do not want to spend my life chasing bug-for-bug compatibility with Linux. It's really not something we should be spending our time on because there's so many more important things to be doing. And it kind of feels like it's holding us back just having to constantly chase whatever they're doing, particularly if they're just deciding that, okay, UDEV is deprecated, you have to use FDEV now. Yeah, it's not a fun situation to be in, basically. And it's more of an opportunity than a setback because it allows us to truly differentiate ourselves on on all sorts of use cases, because if you have a X11 setup with KDE or GNOME, like the guy in the previous talk mentioned, you might as well run Linux because it's just exactly the same. I wanted to develop a complete BSD-specific display server. I haven't really got too far with that yet, but early stages. We have this. Yeah. So yeah, because we didn't have support for Linux's input API, I just decided, hey, let's make this use our input API. So again, this is a very old API that's been in the NetBSD kernel since the late 90s, I think. And it also works around the everything is a file concept. Your keyboard and mouse are just files that the software opens and it reads and interprets the scan codes from the keyboard. And all of the input devices are multiplexed. So if you have like multiple keyboards plugged in, they'll all be available through one standard device. But there are additional devices. So if you want your laptop's keyboard to not be usable anymore because it annoys you or something, you have an external one plugged in, you can just symlink the external keyboard to the main keyboard device. And I think that's quite cool, to be honest. And most Wayland stuff, and even Xorg now, is using this library called libinputs, which is developed by the free desktop people. It doesn't understand our input API at all. It seems kind of focused on providing support for the Linux input API, and we were kind of in a tight situation because this locks us out of being able to use a lot of software. I have to shout out for Michael Forney here because he's been very helpful. He developed a library called Simple Wayland Compositor, or SWC, and I took a knife to it. I ripped out all of the input code. I made and added support for NetBSD's input API. It works. It's fairly well integrated with the system, so it just gets the same keyboard layout and mouse settings as the text console. That previously was not a thing with X. With X, you had to set the keyboard layout separately, and that was just infinitely annoying. And it fits the security promises that Wayland promotes. The access to the input devices is provided through a privileged process. That privileged process is the only thing that has permission to access those devices. Once the privileged process is created, it spawns the actual display server, which then spawns the window manager, and all of those are running unprivileged. I'm quite happy with this. It's cute. This has taken so much debugging. I've just run into bugs and bugs and bugs. There are still bugs. If I right-click right now while giving this talk, the display server will crash. I've been kind of worried about that. That's been my main worry. But it works well enough. I have working OpenGL. I have working web browser. This is kind of usable. It's kind of like DWM, if any of you have used DWM. And yeah, you can go ahead and install this and use it on NetBSD right now if you're running 9, which I don't think has been formally released yet, but a lot of us are running it like it has been formally released yet because it's basically completely stable. Yeah, it's still quite buggy and unstable, but it meets basic needs, which for most people who are developers and running weird operating systems, you probably want a few terminals, you probably want a web browser, you want something to play videos with. That's all available, and there's, like, say, if you want to play some games, this works. Yeah. So I'm very nervous about closing that because in my experience when I close things, sometimes it decides to crash, sometimes it doesn't. And you just need a supported Intel GPU, really, and that's up to Kaby Lake in 9, which isn't that great. We could be moving things forward from there. I've experimented with running this on my Radeon desktop. It worked for a few seconds. That driver is kind of deprecated, and we need to be moving forward with AMD GPU, but again, we're relying on porting code from the Linux kernel, and this is just hell. Nobody wants to be doing this. You have to take months off work to do this. But, you know, this laptop's fine. So we have basically a full set of applications working, WebKit GTK. So if you like web browsers like Midori, they run fine. A lot of NetBSD people are weird and like things like NetSurf and Vimby, and those all work too. And most of XFCE works, but obviously not the full thing, because XFCE relies on X11 for a lot of the its window management functions and so on. So, and Qt5. I haven't tried much of KDE because we don't have much of KDE. I've been working on getting us up to scratch with some GNOME free stuff, but it's not really what I want to spend my life doing. I don't care about GNOME. And SDL2, which is the most important thing for me because it means you can play Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup. I mean, what else do you need a computer for, right? And what doesn't work is a lot of things. Any X11 application is kind of stuck right now because we need the Glamour Xorg driver system. We kind of don't. I've kind of been hoping that someone else will do that so I don't have to. I'm looking at someone specific in the audience. And screen locking and screen brightness, through Xorg you generally handle this with a program like SLock or Xlock or anything else that you might like to, like a screensaver program. But with Wayland, it's not really a standardized part of the protocol, I believe, so it'll have to be integrated into the display server. I do not agree with a lot of these design decisions that involve a lot of things being integrated into the display server. I think it means that we're going to have to end up redoing lots of work. Maybe it'll be worth it in the end, I don't know. But this is the general model that people have decided to go down with, kind of moving away from modularity and integrating things into the server more. And screen brightness, this is actually a problem with my ThinkPad that I've been working on. We need a centralized way to manage screen brightness because usually you rely on Xrandr for that, and if you're running Wayland, obviously you don't have Xrandr. And again, NetBSD people are weird and they like to do things like run a web browser in the frame buffer, or run MLterm in the frame buffer. So if you want to run frame buffer applications, we should be able to do that with them too. And Firefox is a whole can of worms because it's using a lot of weird APIs and functionality, and I can try to run it and give an example of that, since apparently I have tons of time. Okay, so that's one problem, I believe. Okay, let's look at my own documentation. I'm sure I've written about how to do this.
Mods enable Wayland? The environment variable?
Yeah.
Mods underscore enable underscore Wayland equals 1.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Using ZFS?
I'm not using ZFS. I don't think hardware acceleration even works in Firefox. I don't think I have to worry about it being turned on. Yeah, pretty much I wasn't expecting to finish this quickly. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Anyone want to...
What about DPI?
DPI?
Like,
high DPI support. Technically, this laptop is kind of everything's a bit small, but I have some documentation that I can bring up. Say, I have a repository on GitHub called Package Source Wayland, if you want to have a look at that, and it describes a lot of settings that you can tweak. Yeah, see, I've documented how to run Firefox here and probably forgotten about how to do it. If you have a high DPI screen, you can just use these environment variables, and that will scale individual Qt and GTK applications. That's currently not how we're supposed to be doing it, I think. There's some kind of protocol by which you negotiate a higher DPI display, but it has to be handled by the display server, and I have honestly no idea how that works. It's something I need to investigate. I'm just kind of sitting here. Debugging Wayland protocol code is hell. I would not want anyone to be put through this. Like, I spent months just inserting printfs into random parts of the networking code that's doing this awful shared memory stuff, crashing constantly and just generally not working. But I found that what the best way to debug Wayland code is just to fucking rewrite it. Any other questions? Yeah?
Yeah, I'm part of the Illumos people over in Building K, so...
I'm not part of the Illumos people, I just think they're really cool.
I am.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You're really cool, you're doing great stuff. I wanted to point out to you that one distribution based on Illumos in particular, which is OpenIndiana,
Yeah.
they suffer from many of the same problems that you do. Niche system, lack of acceptance of upstreams, lack of manpower, many different things to do at once.
Yeah.
Have you checked with the OpenIndiana people? Maybe you can compare notes, maybe you can use some stuff
Actually,
from them. Maybe they
I talked to some Illumos people at Package Source Con about a year ago, and we were just discussing the Solaris Audio API since it came up, and we have a lot of extensions to the Solaris API, and we were discussing getting them merged in to Illumos just so that more functionality is available, like proper device selection with easily printable names. That would be really nice to have across everything that is still sharing this API, I think. I haven't discussed with them much other stuff, because whenever I talk to them about desktop support, they're like, yeah, I might know a guy who has a laptop, but he needs 3 other laptops because half the hardware is unsupported.
Well, you should try and find out, just my opinion, because I think you're doing very, very good work.
Yeah.
And I think I would like to see it distributed to a wider audience.
Yeah.
So maybe you should try and find the OpenIndiana people, because that's the only distribution of Linux that has a desktop and cares for graphics and Firefox actually playing audio and all of these things.
I mean, I care about these things for entirely selfish reasons. I have a laptop. I wanted to run NetBSD. I wanted to run NetBSD well.
Very, so maybe we can talk afterwards, and I can put you in touch.
Yeah. Sure. But I've been putting in effort to make sure if I write code that is using an API that is shared with Solaris, I make an effort to read the Illumos documentation and just kind of hope that it works. I can't test it myself. I just hope that it works. Yeah.
For the compositor to use any NetBSD specific APIs that are in the WSComs framework.
Can you repeat the question?
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, Nia, can you repeat the question for the people on the screen?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. So you said, is there any NetBSD specific?
Yeah. Can you use any NetBSD specific APIs?
I don't know, honestly. As far as I know, WSComs originated at NetBSD, and that's the only documentation I've been consulting. If people want to port things that I've been working on, I would advise them to do it the way I've done and just create a new file, write your code, try to integrate it with the existing system, try to make it modular. Just there's good and bad ways to do portability. And I think part of the problem why people are so put off supporting BSD is they just think, oh, I'm going to have to add a load of if-def crap to my code base. And that shouldn't be the case. You should be able to have modular support for things like this and keep it nice and clean and keep it nice and separate. Anything else? Sylvan?
Yeah. Screensavers. Can you run like X screensavers and stuff like that with them, or does that need to be kind of revisited as well?
So screensavers, if you actually want to deny inputs to the rest of the system, an individual Wayland application cannot do that. It cannot get complete sole control over whether input is passed to other applications, because that was like a conscious security decision they made. But they've also haven't developed a real protocol for handling this, I don't believe. So you can have a screensaver, but all it will do is stop your CRT from burning in. It won't provide any kind of security from people taking your laptop and posting silly messages on IRC, which I'm sure never happened to me. Like, that's my main use for screen locking, personally. Okay.
You know how the Linux folks do the screen locking thing on Wayland?
So basically the idea is that everything is becoming increasingly platformized. You might have got that hint from the previous talk. GNOME and KDE have gone in a direction where everything is becoming increasingly integrated and part of the whole system. That's not really something that interests me as someone who likes like lightweight window managers and things like that. Yeah, I don't want to deal with that mess. Hey?
Not particularly very much related to the token itself, but this is the first thing I heard about deprecation of Xorg within Red Hat Enterprise or Red Hat in general.
Yeah.
I also like DWM and all the smaller ones, particularly Xmonad, but there are a lot of these which aren't going to be able to be ported to Wayland. Isn't that also a problem they'll have on the Linux side?
I mean, yeah, it's something that people are mad about, but it shouldn't affect you unless you use Red Hat, really. Most of the Xorg maintenance is actually done these days by Alan Coopersmith, who works at Oracle on Solaris. I imagine he'll keep doing that for the time being, at least until Oracle discovers where he's hiding in the basement. And
Please don't forget to repeat the question for the people in the streaming.
Yeah.
They have no idea about what
yeah, no, sorry. That's just about the fate of lightweight window managers if Xorg is being deprecated.
They're saying they're all going to die unless they rewrite.
A lot of them aren't written to support Wayland. For example, Xmonad I know about. DWM is probably small enough to just be rewritten. But
Well, no, because you have to do a lot more to write a Wayland compositor. You have to implement a lot. You do more. Wayland compositors do a lot more than just manage Windows. I'm kind of going into the next person's talk, they're going to talk about that for a bit, and I don't really want to tread on. So it's not so simple as you can just rewrite a simple lightweight window manager to use Wayland. You're going to have to figure out how it's going to manage the screens, manage all the accelerated windows, and manage blitzing and things like that, and input, output. It's going to need to support multiple OSs. You're going to need to figure out how you're going to do that. And the solution that people that is increasingly emerging is there's libraries like SWC that allow you to do less work, but we're still going to have to improve those if we want to keep this kind of system usable moving forward. Yeah. Anything else?
questions? Okay, so thank you. Small present from the room, cookies.
Oh, yeah. Thanks to all the Shock people and the girls who showed up to listen to my talk for emotional support. I appreciate it very much.